Hi, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing? What's up? What's going on? We're gonna have a little bit of fun today. Kind of some, light stuff, off the cuff stuff, some unscripted stuff. Just to kind of take the back end of March a little bit easy. So what we're gonna start off with is we just had that whole big 20th anniversary celebration about a week ago at this point. So we got the official poll rating, the music polls going on currently, and we got a good chunk of developer interviews talking about history of Monster Hunter, stuff like that. A lot of good stuff came out of it. Good bits here and there, a bit of insight here and there, and some interesting factoids that one might be able to extrapolate about the future of Monster Hunter. Now, that's kind of a stupid idea, because, nothing's set in stone. We've seen nothing but a teaser for Wilds, and we're operating off a translation from Japanese, so, who knows how one-to-one things are. Very different languages. So, what we're going to do is we're just going to go through some of the stuff that came out about a week ago. We're going to take a look at stuff. I'll mark it what I think about different things. We'll kind of talk about what we think certain things might mean, where we think certain things might go. We'll have fun with the fan poll, and then just in the comments down below, we'll have a talk about stuff like this. So this is just kind of like a discussion prompt down below, that kind of thing. That'd be fun. The biggest and most notoriety-driven aspect of all this is definitely going to be the community poll. So we're going to talk about that first. We're just kind of going to go down it. I'll talk about a couple of different things here and there. I'm not going to break down every single entry. That'd be too long, but we're just gonna talk about some thoughts. All right, so let's talk about this guy. Just kind of right off the bat, I want to talk about some of the tip top guys and talk about why they're there. This is deserved. This isn't shocking, right? This might be a little bit whelming for a couple of people, but it's a popularity poll, right? So the hell did you expect? The most popular is going to be the most popular. Duh. I think this is very much deserved for Zinogre. We were talking about this when I was streaming this actual event, the morning of. And Zinogre's just been this breakout thing. I think we equated him to a Lucario or something that came out kind of mid, early on-ish. Kind of getting into the middling years of Monster Hunter, and they just pushed him real hard, brought him up to the forefront, made a big deal out of him. Zinogre's a major teacher's pet. The Ichinose, the director for Portable Third and a lot of the Portable games, this is his guy, right? This is absolutely his guy. With the Deviants, Thunderlord's one of the big bads of that line. Zinogre was the top dog apex in Rise's Rampages. Zinogre comes back a lot. He's in every Portable game. He very rarely misses a numbered title. Missing out on, Try Before It Was Invented, Base Game World being MH5, and then he got, fan requested into being Iceborne, if I remember correctly. Wasn't an original intention, but popularity's sake got him in there. People are talking about this being a new render. I think this is just the Iceborne render. It's perfectly fine with me, because I think, personal taste, I think the Iceborne render is the stronger out of all of them. I think they really kind of cleaned them up. Check the Zinogre video I did a while ago to talk about the art design in Iceborne Zinogre. He was ahead of his time in terms of combat, kind of ahead of his time in terms of soundtrack. I think he's probably the first one of the first bouts of electric guitar being in a battle soundtrack in Monster Hunter. His turn radius made him one of the fastest monsters going. The charge up mechanic was always super unique. Lightning and wolves in general, very cool combination. And then him being this obviously beloved creature by the developers and the fans alike kind of gets Zinogre into this spot where, unlike a lot of the other veteran flagships, he's never really kind of hit that same point of stagnation. This is something else I've talked about, is every single one of his appearances, his moveset gets changed around a little bit and his combo paths get changed around a little bit. So he's always kind of swapping back and forth a little bit and evolving a little bit. So he has been ahead of the curve and always still kind of innovating. He's just always kind of been at the top of this game. He's this dude who came out strong and just never really fell off. Yeah, maybe Rise the teeniest bit because they bulked him up a lot for Iceborne, but even by that comparison, you have, of course, Apex and Rise, and you have the Thunder Uppercut that he gets in Rise. he's top dog for a reason. The developers take really good care of him. He's just fundamentally really cool. I think the design's finally been like cleaned up properly, and I hope the Iceborne is what we're kind of sticking with. I think Zinogre in Wilds is probably going to be a bit of a safe bet, and with like those lightning strikes we're seeing in the trailers and whatnot, and if it is New World and we're sticking with that Zinogre, awesome, amazing. Super happy to see him. Maybe in some people's estimation he has, but by my opinion, I don't think he's ever worn out his welcome. He's always got something new, right? He's always got something to add, some level of improvement. This is deserved. This is deserved. 100% this is deserved. I don't care, right? This is deserved. Let's keep going, because I don't want to talk about him for too long. We have a lot of stuff to cover today. All right, number 2, not a shock at all. Nergigante is the flagship of the biggest, most popular game in Monster Hunter, and you're gonna see the influence of world definitely hits this poll a lot. World monsters definitely come to the foreground a little bit. You're gonna notice that like Rise monsters kind of filter a bit more towards the back. Not that it's completely one-sided, not at all, but you kind of can see those trends there. And big impression off of Nergigante, even though I don't think he's been the best served. I think his narrative could be like, he has a really good like lead and build up presence in world. He just kind of filters out towards the back half a little bit, and you don't really get to quite see the impact that it's said that he's having. You know, has a big cameo in stories too, kind of gets mopped, but the presence of the dude is undeniable. The philosophy behind his gameplay is incredibly intuitive, very smart, an excellent teacher monster. I think definitely one of the best like mentor monsters, which is perfect for a game that they knew were going to bring in a ton of new players. I think in terms of pure gameplay, Nergigante is expertly designed. You know, he's got a couple of detractors recently because he's gotten so popular. You know, he might not be my personal top 2, but like again, he's kind of like this icon around the new dawn of Monster Hunter. And again, fundamental gameplay, expertly designed. Design in and of itself, fantastic. And I think with how good Nergigante looks, it really, for me, dispels this whole notion of, I'll stick on this, the fact that, like, frontier monsters are these over-designed, spiky pieces of crap. I think it's really just proper modeling and proper technology, proper color blending and stuff like that. Not to say that every frontier design is a winner. They're not, but I think it is an overgeneralized narrative that doesn't really hold up. And when you see something that looks this good, I think it really kind of dispels that for me. So Nergigante gets a couple of points in my book for that, because I find myself a little defensive of the frontier guys. One of the big shocks. No way he wasn't going to get top 20. Laggy is definitely 100% bumped by the fact that he is currently mad underdogged. People are really rooting for him. There's a lot of try guys like myself who have a lot of nostalgia for him, who are growing up. They want to see him in there. You know, you have that mod that exists for him in Rise. That test footage of him in World everybody's seen that test footage. And people are rooting for him, because we know by now that it's a skeletal issue. That you have the monsters with their bellies on the ground, and just kind of how uneven the terrain is now makes for a lot of collision issues. You know, we're going to see what this updated RE engine can do. We're going to see what like full power modern PCs and PS5s can do. That might be the push that he needs. And they've been talking about bringing him in since Worlds. I have to imagine that Laggy's been under development hell for years now. So he's super underdog. A lot of people are really pulling for him right now. You can kind of count that as like an artificial boost, maybe. I don't think that would be inaccurate. That kind of stat is definitely pumped up the numbers a little bit. I think if he had been in World, Laggy might be in a lower placement, not drastically, but a bit lower. I think I'd be willing to make that call. This speaks to just how cool he is, how neat the concept of underwater is, how much people want to see him, how much people are pulling for him. No shot this poll had a massive effect on base game Wilds. At the maximum, maybe the title updates, likely the expansion that'll happen, and probably some decent data for whatever Portable 6 is going to look like, right? But, you know, if Laggy's been in question, I made a post about this. There is a dude chained to a radiator in a basement in a Capcom HQ in Tokyo trying to get this dude to work. Even more interestingly, I've seen this pointed out a lot, is this possibly a new render? I mean, it's definitely a new render. It's definitely a new model. Is this an in-game model for Wilds? Can't confirm that. You know, tinfoil hat. The big thing is the eyes. I went looking for this because I saw this pointed out on Twix. I'm gonna call it that. Let's see if I can get that to work. The green eyes. The green eyes are new. They're definitely new. I went, like, just out of curiosity, I went looking. Red eyes, like red, orange eyes, red, orange eyes, red, orange eyes. I never saw green. Those are like emeralds sticking out of his head. That's interesting, right? Again, you know, tinfoil hat. Is this a slip-up? Is this an accidental slip-up that they kind of show that we're getting like a new world Lagiacrus that has green eyes for some particular reason? Or they're just giving him green eyes now? Maybe. Maybe. It's not stupid to think that. It's not stupid to think that, honestly. It's a good looking render too. The head shape and the horns, I like kind of, they've darkened them up a little bit. Like, it looks really nice and nasty looking. That's a cool looking dude. If this is what he's gonna look like in a Wilds, holy crap, dog. It's a good looking guy. Seeing him in 3, even if there was a bump, this made me mad happy. This made me really happy to see the guy who started my adventure out up in 3rd. All right, let's talk a little bit here. Valstrax in 4th, that's a little bit of a surprise to me. I've heard a lot of people talking, you know, what do the numbers look like if variations aren't taken into consideration? Interesting question, because GU's pretty popular, right? A fair bout of people have their hands on it. To see a 4th gen monster in 4th is kind of crazy, especially the regular Valstrax, because he's not in Rise, and Crimsonglow is the one that I think the most people are very connected to. So, you know, how much kind of spillover is there between Crimsonglow and Valstrax? Interesting to think about. But it's cool that he's up in 4th, right? One of the best theme songs, awesome moveset, awesome design, awesome gimmick, radiation of pure cool factor. Very interesting to see him in 4th. Not something I would have expected. I kind of figured he'd be bumped down a little bit because of the Crimsonglow thing. Gore in 5th. Honestly, my approximation would have been that those two got flip-flopped. Because Gore is super big over here. I don't know, he might not be quite as big in Japan, but 4 Ultimate was a really important game stateside for a lot of people. A lot of people really, really, really like Gore. The fight's only okay, but like, Gore's sick, right? Not a shock at all. Honestly, probably would have thought it was higher. Next surprise for me is Velkhana in 6. Velkhana in 6 is interesting. I think a big reason for it is that Iceborne, even almost more than World, I feel Iceborne is beloved as one of the favorite Monster Hunter things ever made. You know, the sum total World Iceborne is absolutely beloved, and you know, Velkhana is incredibly synonymous with Iceborne. That game feels like it was built for her, or she was built for it, you know, vice versa. She is known as the Iceborne Wyvern, and I think that that's a big point for her, because a lot of people are a little iffy on the fight. You know, whenever stuff about Velkhana comes up, there's a sizable chunk of people who don't love her. And her fight can, you know, it can be a little obnoxious. A lot of people have been saying, and I will definitely hop on the bandwagon, that her ice wall should definitely be able to block her ice beams. I think if you nail that, I think Velkhana bumps up another level in how much I like her. Not to say that she's bad. Definitely has a lot of fans. I do think the very close association with Iceborne got Velkhana a lot of points. That's totally fair, you know, but it's fun to kind of guess about this thing. Nergigante an interesting one. Very pure cool, just a jet black bat panther, as Austin likes to call him. Very sleek, very simple. Hasn't been at the top of his game, and definitely in Rise, not the top of his game. He was pretty cool with the bleed introduced in Worlds. He's an oldie but a goodie for sure. A little surprised he's, I I think in my own personal estimation, he'd be a little bit lower. I can see it, right? Mainstay, very, very pure cool. I think is one of those monsters that is, he's one of the flagships that's starting to feel a little old. One of those things that like Zinogre doesn't suffer from. I think like a Narga and a Tigrex is starting to feel a little old and could use that Rise Rathalos bump. Fatalis being 8 makes sense. I almost would have estimated him being a little bit higher. I think I was rooting for probably around like 6th. Absolutely iconic. His mythology has been really, really big in Monster Hunter for a very long time. Back and forth on that. Fight was never exemplary, comes back in Iceborne, and is this absolute god of destruction. Massive, massive impression with a lot of people. Definitely deserves to be up this high. I would have assumed a little bit higher, but you know, 8 out of 229 is good. Ruiner Nerg, little surprised he's up this high. I feel like just the regular Nergigante is just kind of cooler. You know, the metal spikes they're really cool. But I feel like I feel like calling it try hard might be a little bit insulting, but you know what I mean? It feels like it's really trying to be just that next step up when it's something that I don't feel like Nerg needed. Ruiner is good. I said this in my 5th generation tier list. Ruiner just kind of needed a little something else, I think. Like, again, Bleed is cool, had a couple of new moves, just kind of felt like a little master rank Nergigante-y. I felt like a variation of Nergigante could be pushed more. And this guy, everyone who downvoted the game on Steam, you're a weenie. And people like me, validated and vindicated, baby. Alatreon deserves to be top 10. He's been a legend since Tri. Now he's just a god in Iceborne. And you know, he's a monster where you have to play his game. You have to do it. And if you can't play his game, you don't deserve to win. Or, you know, you can just be amazing at the game and be able to brute force it with Raw, which you can totally do. He is the epitome of the you have to play this monster's game, which has been a thing since the original Monster Hunter. Eschaton Judgment is not a problem. You need to improve, you need to make a build. Deserved. Validated. Vindicated. Yeah, Alatreon. Alright, how the did this happen? How did Abyssal Lagiacrus get in 12th? I saw on Twix. I'm gonna keep calling it that. Gaijin Hunter posted results out of a whole bunch of different regions, and Japan was a big push for Abyssal, apparently. And then people were talking about the fact that Terminal Montage made a post about him, which also, you know, probably did a little bit of something. But 12th, dude. 12th. A monster who appeared once, over a decade ago, in a game a lot of people probably haven't played. How did that happen? That's weird, right? That's weird. That's cool, though. This was the cool, when they were running the 20 through 11, this was the coolest thing to see. Stygian's not super surprising. You know, Zinogre, loved Zinogre. Primordial Malzeno, also not surprising. There's definitely a couple of monsters that are up here, a little bit more legendary, but Primordial Malzeno, monster number 13, most recent monster ever added, phenomenal boss fight, really good story tie-in, kind of wrapping up the whole narrative of Sunbreak. Excellent boss battle, legitimate emotion comes out of it, you know, some character development out of Fiorane, and just a really superb moment to cap off a really good expansion to a very good Monster Hunter game. 13th place, if he came in like 11th, I wouldn't be surprised because he's so new. You know, there is a little, he's been around long enough that I don't think it's really kind of a honeymoon type of thing, but still very fresh in the minds of players. Mizu tops the Fated 4. I kind of called this. Yeah, again, not shocked. Japanese aesthetic, people love that. Very big theme music. The weeby aesthetic definitely kind of helps it a lot. Overall, really good fight, really good design. The bubble gimmick's a lot of fun to run against. Just a lot of personality, really cool design. Excellent monster. We're sticking with old Fatalis, huh? I feel like Elder Fatalis or Ancestral Fatalis would be a cooler rebranding. I heard that old Fatalis was kind of being worked in around the GU era. 15th place for this old man. Pretty cool to see. Safi'jiiva, again, could have thought he'd be a little bit higher, but not shocked top 20. That siege, very iconic. The introduction, very iconic. One of the best bits of theme music in Monster Hunter of all time. In fact, I think these are probably some of like the top 2. I voted for Old Fatalis theme for the music poll, by the way. And we'll cap off the top 20. Really happy for Brachy. higher than I thought he was going to be. Interesting that he beat out Rathalos and Tigrex, honestly. Very interesting. Namielle's really cool to see up there. Probably one of the greatest implementations of elements that we've seen. Absolutely gorgeous design, masterfully put together. Fits beautifully into the Coral Highlands. Shagaru Magawa, iconic, built in with Gore. You know, a lot of relatives of the big icons are going to get a push because of that. Look at that, the Star Wing pose. Really, really striking imagery. Love that. Yeah, Crimsonglow makes the top 20. This is kind of the reason I was a little surprised that Valstrax was number 4, is that Crimsonglow. I kind of figured like Crimsonglow would take 20, Valstrax would probably be like 25 or something. But cool to see. Especially really cool advancements made on Valstrax here with the hovering in midair and with the spears and the Death Star laser and stuff like that. Like Crimsonglow came out running pretty damn good variants. Not gonna lie, little sad that Rathalos didn't crack 20, you know, for all the good work I've done. Right outside of it, yeah, I can take it though, but I have a lot of respect for Rathalos. And Tigrex in 23, I'm happy about this, honestly, because Tigrex is a monster, kind of like Narga, feeling a little old, lost a little bit of the mojo, lost a little bit of the legend. I'm rooting for him to come back in Wilds. I'd love to see him to come back and really kind of get the spring in his step. Raging Brachy in 22, really, really cool. Furious Rajang beats the regular Rajang, as we're going to see later, by a good chunk of points. That's particularly interesting. One of the few monsters on this list where the variation overtakes the original. Glavenus taken up 25th, very cool. Bolt Reaver in 26, that's interesting. GU Deviants, yeah, people know what GU is, people who have played GU. Highest Deviant on the list. That's interesting. Beats out Aslos and is the highest deviant on the list. Beats out Bloodbath, Hellblade, and Thunderlord. That's kind of crazy to think about. I wonder what really pushed him up. Again, this might be, I'm wondering if this Bolt Reaver is a monster that the Japanese really, really love. Very cool to see. It's cool to be surprised on this. Chaotic Gore. Alright, I saw this one moving around. You have Gogmazios, Dalamadur, Amatsu, and then Dodogama in 31. A lot of meme votes for Dodogama. You know, I've talked about it before. I'm not like full in on the Dodo cult. I totally get it. I do like them. It's so funny to see Tar, God, Eldritch Monsters, Snake, Deity King, Hurricane, Destruction Dragon, some of like the big heavy hitters of Elder Dragons. And then there's this guy down here. That's really funny. I like that a lot. The Japanese love Kezu. I have been informed of this, that Kezu wins a lot of popularity polls. That's why he's up that far. A lot of the Americans don't like Kezu. I'm very interested to see what's going to happen with Kezu when I run my community event. God, even like God, I might get demonetized. He looks like a penis. Very high for Arisen. Atal Kala up in 34th. Not shocked about that. And I'm assuming the Atal Neset votes, stupid that's a part of this. Definitely offset her by quite a bit. If Atal Neset wasn't on this up for consideration, which it shouldn't have been, Ka would probably be maybe close to 30. Maybe not cracking top 30, but like right there. Maybe 2, maybe 3 spaces up. Neset, I think, is like 98th. Probably top 30, maybe top 25, which is cool to see final boss from a non-5th gen game up this high. Yeah, unless we're counting like title updates. I think this is higher than Guys Magorum, higher than Xeno, higher than Allmother, higher than Shar. Well, Kaku in 35. That actually makes me really happy. Kind of a meme thing that it is right next to, you have young Kaku, and then again, you have the joke, you know, Bloodbath Diablos, Hellblade Glavenus, beat out by Jan Kutku. But Kutku's a legend. Monster as old as time, first true proving ground for MH1. Been around quite a bit, absent in the 5th gen, which again is some reason to be a little surprised that he's this high, but he's a gem of a guy. Definitely kind of due for a little bit of a modernization, I think, but happy to see him do this well. He's an old classic. Kieran beats out Devil Joe. That's a little interesting. I felt like Devil Joe would be a little bit more beloved than Kieran. Again, glad to see Kieran up this high. I feel like he's a pretty overhated monster. And the Malzeno being up here, really cool too. Odogaron. Breakout hit out of World. Not shocked at all. Same with Zinogre. Pretty high for a Cantor. Honestly, really good spot for him. Poor Yukonlos bumped down to 107. A Cantor is definitely another one of like the old legends. One of those guys that a lot of people who are 2nd gen players would talk about and kind of hype up pretty highly. Not shocked that a Cantor is up this high. This feels like a really good placement for a Cantor. And then some really cool ones. So we have Aslos, Espinas, and Kashala Daora. Aslos gets beaten out by Bolt Reaver, still top 50. Frontier exclusive monster that comes in Sunbreak, the most most recent expansion is in 46th place. I hope that's a signal of good things to the developers. That bring back Frontier is a thing that we want to see. That Espinas is a success out of the gate in his first major appearance. Very well liked. I don't think Flaming Espinas is too far behind. I think this is a good sign. Kashadora also up this high for how much flack he kind of gets, even though really good redemption arc in Rise, though I think they could definitely tune up his gimmicks a little bit more and just kind of like balance out the really good fighting with the strong gimmicks that you have to work around. Soulseer, Kolv. Little high up for Dire, because again, not one that a ton of people super know. Oh, let's talk about this one. Yamasukami is in 53rd. How in the world did that happen? This dude's been in Freedom Unite Purgatory for 15 years going on now. Also, B52 in 52, not lost on me. I've seen that floating around too. Very cool. I guess Yamasukami got voted in just because he's so bizarre. Again, I'm wondering if he's a monster that the Japanese have a lot of nostalgia for. That's got to be interesting though. I wonder how the developers reacted to Yamasukami being this high. A pretty obscure monster at this point. Lucen's not a shock. Comes out of Sunbreak, really big hit. People like Valhazak. Magnamalo in 56. Good placement for him. A flagship who's had a lot of rough patches. A lot of discussion back and forth about the design, about the placement. He's a dude who's kind of had a bit of a struggle story. I think I'd really like to see Magnamalo come back again. I'd be shocked if he was in a numbered game. I feel like Ichinose is probably going to be the guy to take him back up and play around with him a little bit more. But Magnamalo coming back, I'd be very happy with. I'm glad he is where he is. Top 60, just outside of the top 50. The dude deserves some flowers. Rajang at 57 is weird. Rise might have hurt the dude, because there was a lot of talk about how nerfed into the ground Rajang was in Monster Hunter Rise. Got a little bit better in Sunbreak. I feel like the reputation of this guy was hurt a little bit by Rise. His reputation coming out of Iceborne was pretty good. Really cool cutscene. Generally, like, pretty heavy hitting fight. Got a nice big highlight and a Tuttle update. I don't know, I think Rise hurt his perception a little bit, and Furious kind of took things over, because Furious was a lot faster and a lot just kind of more rough and tumble. A little bit of a nice return to form for proper Rajang would be good to see. You did good, buddy. 59th, I'll take it. You did good. Classic Elder Dragon, been around a good long while. Had some really good changes. Never been like the biggest fan favorite. I was you know, I always kind of had a secret hope that he'd be top 20, but too many other monsters that are too good and too famous. Cracks the top 60, did the math, almost to top 25th percentile. I'm happy about that. Seregios gets some love too, which is well deserved. Black sheep of the flagships might not be redheaded stepchild of the flagships is definitely kind of Seregios, even under Magnamalo. And Lao up in 61 for how much people don't like that fight. That's interesting to see. Good spot for Chameleos, good spot for Violet. Pookie being up here is really cool. Shaw's another one interesting to see up that high. Not shocked about Cedius, or Kideus. Always been a weird one to pronounce. Look at him! 68th place, Great Jaggy comes... Oh, dude, if Great Jaggy came in 69th place, it would be the greatest video ever made. Oh, God. Best raptor. Best voted raptor, this guy. And you know what? I agree. Great Macau might be a little bit better. You know what? Honestly, Great Macau, it's probably Great Macau then Great Jaggy. Look at him. Oh, that makes me happy. I love that dude. He looks so cool. He's a better pack monster than Great Azuchi. 69th place, coveted 69th goes to Tobi Kadachi. Really cool to see this like low to mid level monster up this high. Runaway hit, Tobi Kadachi. A lot of really good fanged wyverns coming out of World. And Barioth cracks into the top 70. Really cool mainstay, been around a while, a lot of different incarnations. This feels right, definitely. Behind his older brothers, which again, does feel right. Barioth is a good old reliable, always has been. Rurikon being mad about this. You know what, 73 ain't that bad, buddy. It's okay. 73 is pretty... For a variant of a monster that is extremely famous and, you know, just much bigger explosions, really cool design with the purple flowers and everything. Cool kind of like neon nitro color scheme. You know, 73 ain't bad. Diablo 71, also not bad. You know, I feel like the Blosses haven't peaked yet. Bloodbath is peak. The normal Blosses haven't peaked yet. I think there's still some finagling with the combat to get the Blosses really good. Silver 74, that's good. Molten 75 is really cool. Crimson 77. 78 for Rathian. better than I expected. Rathian, I think, is a monster that deserves a lot of respect. I'd love to give her a highlight sometime soon. I want to see what Wilds does with her if she gets a couple of new moves, because Rathlow's got a nice big pump of adrenaline in Rise and Sunbreak. Rathian didn't really. I think she's kind of in like the Narga, Kuga, Tigrex, Diablos range, where it kind of needs one or two new things. Nergigante 79th is pretty sick, though. I figured Shara would be higher. Alright, what the f*** happened here? What the f***? Why is Vestpoint Queen in 82? Look, I don't hate the girl, but like, what the hell is she doing at 82? What did you guys do? Who voted for her? Who voted for Vestpoint Queen as their favorite? Why 82? Why over young Garuga? That's weird. Zamtrios in 81, though. That's kind of nice. Garuga deserves to be a little bit higher, I think. Garuga could take a couple of spots. Garuga's really cool, and he deserves more big bad bird friends. Still 85th, still cracks top 100. That's Gammoth wasn't in 5th gen, not shocked. We're going to talk about Gammoth a little bit. Quirupeko at 86, that's really... Why? Where has Quirupeko been, dude? Where the hell has this dude been since Tri-Ultimate? Good pick for 87. Not a big Kuliaku fan myself, but I can respect it. Frostfang Barriott's always kind of a weird one, just kind of shipped in after Alatreon, but alright, fine. That's interesting. People always talk about how they don't like Plesioth. And you know what? I think there's a good monster in there that's just hidden and trapped under him being big and him never getting the proper attention to detail that he deserves. I'm kind of rooting for a Plesioth Renaissance. I think there's a good monster in there. Kind of neat that he's 91. There's definitely some meme to that. And Agnactor 92, that's a pretty good spot for him. Gossen 93, good spot. This was stupid. That's a robot. That's a robot being held together with praying mantis silk by a praying mantis. That's not a monster, that's a robot. That's dumb. That shouldn't be in there. Noxin 94, though. That's pretty nice. And Lunastra 96? I can take that. I know Lunastra came out of World with a bit of a dicey reputation. I definitely want her to come back. I definitely want her to be a common cohort of Teostra. Jen in 98, not bad. Yeah, Flaming Espinas in 99. So, subspecies of a Frontier Original subspecies coming in. Really good impression, really good fight. 100th takes place, Orochi Kirin. I'd love to see Orochi Kirin come back. Malfestio doesn't crack top 100. I would have loved to see Malfestio a little bit higher. Definitely over something like Queen Vespoid. Celtis Queen in 104. Again, another definitely should be higher. One of the most intuitive and just ingenious monsters ever made. Celtis Queen should absolutely come back. Should absolutely be higher. Kind of surprised about this one. I kind of figured Anjanath would be a little bit higher, honestly. Because Anjanath is a borderline pseudo-flagship, pseudo-poster boy of World. Kind of figured he'd be higher. It's really cool. Kind of vulture, T-Rex. I like Anjanath. This is a little disrespectful. You're going to put a Cantor up in the top 50 and Yukonlos doesn't crack top 100? I'm a Cantor guy too, right? I'm a Cantor guy. This is low. This is low. Nersilla's also a little low. Monoblosa makes sense. He's kind of hasn't been around so much. Higher than I thought Azure was going to be. Cool for Gold Rathian, though. Global at 114. I kind of like that. I feel like that. What are you doing? What is this goblin doing at 111th? Who voted for you, Gremlin? Tetsu 114. Little high for you. Little high for you. You're just a boar. You're just a bullfanger with more health. And like a head sweep attack. You're up high. You're up high too. I don't particularly like you. Shrieking Legiana, you're a little high. Baroth 120, Durambros 121. Not bad, not bad. You know, Durambros definitely could go a little bit higher. Congalala 122. I kind of like that. I kind of dig that. I like Conga. He's a goofy guy. Highest voted crab goes to Shen Garen. That's another weird one, right? You would have assumed to be Shogun. Or even Daimyo. Shen Garen takes 124 over every other crab. Over Rust Razor and Shogun and Daimyo. That's weird. Again, this is a monster who's been in Freedom Unite Purgatory for over a decade. How did he take 124? Jagras 125? I can kind of see that. Arzros 126? Yeah, two very kind of like low, Jagras and Arzros, two very kind of like low-level monsters. Good amount of personality and whatnot, starting level monsters, you know. One's a starter for Portable Third, one's a starter for World. Nibble Star for 129. Apex Zinogre makes a lot of sense to me. I think he's probably the most extinct of all, or the most distinct of all the Apexes. Red Kezu's a little higher than I thought it was going to be, which is cool though. Red Kezu's lore-wise is a pretty cool monster. And Najarala 131, again, probably could have been bumped a little bit. 4 Ultimate just had like really good monsters. There's Daimyo, 10 places back from Shen. Very surprising. Acidic Lavinus is a little bit higher than I thought it'd be. I didn't think Acidic Lavinus seemed to have a ton of staying power. This is an interesting one. So Royal Ludroth 138, again, could be bumped up a little higher. I got a soft spot for the guy. Gravios, Black Gravios, 139 and 140. That's really interesting. Pretty cool, though. As an instance of something that happens, that you have these two right next to one another. It's just kind of interesting. It must have been split almost like even right down the middle with just a little bit of lean towards the core Gravios. I'd assume the main one would kind of win out a little bit, but I feel like the Black Gravios just has like a nice little extra layer of infamy from how tough he could be in 4U. If Geismagorm in 141, I would have figured Geismagorm would be higher because he was generally very well liked out the gate, but he only ever got the one quest, and that might have something to do with it. There should have been like a hazard Geismagorm. Great Macau in 144. I think that makes him our second Raptor. I think we haven't hit any of the Dromes. There's been no Baggy, Baggy and Raga are like way towards the bottom. We haven't hit a Zuchi. Yeah, no, I think second Raptor is Macau. And Gipsross in 145th is also a little bit interesting. Again, a generally infamous monster. Love this. the back and forth between those two. Zora Magdaros being not like bottom 30 is interesting because people hate Zora for how boring that fight can be. Narwa the Allmother being 153rd is kind of wacky. That's kind of wacky. Yeah, no, I guess the Rise monsters just didn't quite stick as much as the World ones. Again, the music alone and the story behind the Serpents is kind of nuts. Rachna should be way higher than 152. Velocidrome 154, third place for the Raptors. Again, feels low just for how famous he is, but he only does have like the 3 moves. I figured Bombro and Shogun would be more popular. Garangolm I also figured would be more popular. Oh no, Kuliyaku was in second place. We saw Kulu, because now we have Zitzi. I was about to say, like, Zitzi beats out Kulu, and like, no. Kulu was second place. Then we get to like the pocket of Risen Elders. Makes sense. Also, I can definitely understand why Risen Teostra is bottom of these 3, because Risen Chameleos was a really nice big bump for Chameleos, and then Kushala was already on a bit of a high for Rise, so just kind of Teostra, but like a little bit more, a little bit bigger, a little bit badder. He wasn't quite as much of a surprise as the other 2, so I can definitely see him being the bottom of the Risens. Rust Razor should be way higher. Yeah, it makes sense, but I like Rattlebon a lot. Feel like he could be higher. Coral should be higher. That's one of the best subspecies ever made. Coral Pookie should definitely be higher. Hypnocatrice, that also makes sense. Again, Freedom Unite Purgatory. I'd love to see Hypnoc come back. I'd really like to see Hypnoc come back. Then we get a couple of Apexes. Lavasioth definitely gets knocked back because of World and the perception from there. Though, you know what? In GU, he wasn't that bad. Probably the second best Piscine Wyvern is GU Lavasioth. I'd love to see Green Plesioth get a bit of a glow up, because I think it's one of the most beautifully designed monsters out there. Yeah, you just have like the pocket of the greens. Green Nagakuga is just kind of like what do you do kind of monster. Also, how in the world is Cephadrome not like bottom 20, bottom 10? People hate Cephadrome. Tidal Naja, another water subspecies that should be way higher. Though this one makes a little bit more sense because it's not as well known as Coral Pookie, but again, a little disrespectful. And then Baleful's probably a little high. I mean, we're starting to get low there. Bishaten is way low. This should be way higher. And so should Pyre, dude. Yeah, no, some of the Rise monsters just didn't get the respect they deserved. Langonga could be a little bit higher. Yeah, I feel like he's definitely kind of the middle child of the monkeys, though. Some of these subspecies are kind of right where they belong, I think. Desert Celtis Queen should definitely be higher, just by proxy of it being a Celtis Queen. Somnican should also be higher. There's a lot of, like, really cool gimmicks to the fight. Stonefist makes sense, though, and Crystalbeard. Probably some of, like, the most lackluster of the deviants, Crystalbeard especially. And then Stonefist is, like, I think even like Snow Baron and Red Helm, I think, are a little bit cooler than Stonefist. Yeah, Sandbear. Great Gyros could get a bump. Great Gyros could really get a bump, honestly. Underrated monster. Great Azuchi's also low. I'm shocked that you are as high as you are. Who in their right mind remembers Ruby Basarios? I have no idea what you do. That's really low. I mean, it makes sense because you have Narwa the All-Mother definitely taking away votes from Thunder Serpent Narwa. And Thunder Serpent has no presence in Sunbreak. That's low, though. That's really low. Terra Shogun should definitely be lower, too. Nobody remembers Terra Shogun's Scimitar, and his gimmick is not his own anymore. Plum should definitely be higher. Pretty cool subspecies. Kind of get it, though. I'd love to see Copper come back. I think Copper's the best looking Blangonga. I kind of like that he doesn't have the head bump, and the brown fur looks really good on him. I kind of respect Blood Orange being this low. He's kind of a downgrade, a little bit. Side grade at the best of regular Bishiten. Great Roggy's kind of weird that he's... Roggy and Baggy being this low is kind of surprising to me. Purple Gipsaros is not. I like Restaurambros, but I feel like this is another one people don't really remember. What in the world is Beatotus doing this low? Again, what are you guys doing? Beatotus is 220. He's in bottom 10. What are you doing? This is the best Piscean Wyvern. And it's not close. He's cool. He makes like chainsaw noises and he swims around in snow. What are you guys doing? What are you doing? I'm excited for my community event because Beatotus is not going to be this much of a loser in that. Like, what is this? 223rd? What did you do? Aurora Somnicanth, that is deserved. You're lame. Alright. Someone's gotta lose. And you know what? I've said this before. I kind of thought Crystalbeard was gonna take last place because I forgot that Steel Uragon existed. Poor guy. Poor dude. You know the let's make blank monsters fun or different I did with Lao Shenlong and Azure and Pink? I'm going to confirm this. In April, I'm going to do a let's make Steel Uragon fun. I'm going to try and tackle him and go after him and talk about him and do a video on him because I feel like that'd be a lot of fun to do. Steel Uragon's getting attention again, and a lot of people have been saying this, and I'm going to pull for this too. Put Steel Uragon in a game. Put Steel Uragon in a game. That'd be hilarious. Make him really cool. Please. That'd be the best thing ever. Alright, so that is all the monsters. Remember when we thought this was going to be a countdown timer and they were going to like slowly start filling in all the weapons over like a period of time, whatnot? What a bunch of clowns we were. All right, so we're going to cover the interviews real quick. We're just going to see what they have to say. So this one's going to cover Monster Hunter G, and Monster Hunter Do. So the portable guys are going to be Ichinos who's going to talk about those.
まずモンスターハンターとかモンスター、実は一番初めにできたモンスターってレイヤーなんですよね。
That classic Rathian model back when she was like super dark green all over. Yeah, no, Rathian deserves a little bit more respect than she gets. I think she really deserves a nice big tune-up so that people will pay more attention to her. First monster ever designed too. Crazy that it's not Rathalos, right? You know, one would think. Yeah, no, it's her. Love her.
ですよね。
そうそうそう。まあ一番最初に上がったアートがレイヤーだと緑色のああいうこう毒性を持った飛竜みたいなものをまずデザイナーがデザインしたっていうそれ以上でもそれ以下でもないかなと思ってて。
だから初代のロゴの上にあるのはレイヤーなんですよね。
She's even on the logo. More respect for Rathian. Players and developers, honestly.
そうそうそう。だから
実はレウスと思ってる方も多いかもわかんないですけど。
そうなのねって言ってた頃は本当に普通のドラゴンデザインしてたし。
I heard about this, right? That Monster Hunter was used to be considered, or was originally planned around being a more typical like fantasy game, Best decision they ever made was changing this around, right? Going with the dense ecology, going with wyverns over dragons, going with swords over magic and everything, and building up these like living, breathing, grounded worlds with a fantastical element to them. You know, eventually we did get a really cool Capcom fantasy action RPG. It's called Dragon's Dogma. I haven't played it yet, though. It's in my backlog. It's in the backlog of Doom. I'll get to it. And then I'll get to Dragon's Dogma 2 as well.
ドラゴンじゃなくてもっと自分たちなりのこのデザインされた生き物をちゃんと作ろうってなって
And no one has ever made video game creatures better than Monster Hunter. Nobody. No one's done it. Nobody does it better. No one. Nobody. Never. Best decision, one of the greatest decisions in game design ever made. No one's ever beaten them. Like, these animals are iconic, dude. They're iconic. They're so cool. The amount of work that goes into them, the amount of depth that goes into them, they put so much more thought into these guys than most developers would ever even like think to. We just looked at that list, right? 228 of them. How many of them were like actually bad? How many of those guys are like actually bad? Like 4, 5, 6 maybe? Like actually like full on terrible bad. It's like 10. At the worst, at least in my opinion. Some people can be a little bit more picky than I am, but I'd say if I had to count the ones that I thought were like actually poorly designed, crappy, doo-doo, poo-poo bad, I don't think I would pass my second hand. There's almost 300 of them. It's nuts.
全然違いますもんね。
全然もともとデザイナーがやってたのはチャチャブみたいな
ちょっとゴブリンみたいなやつですよね。
そうそうそうすごいこうバキバキのもうゴブリンでさ怖いわ
Again, good choice. Felines are just really iconic. You know, people love cats. And you just have these walking around cats with swords and battle armor fighting for you. It's just an extra bit of Monster Hunter that's really unique. Really cool choice to swap them around to cats.
ヘビーボウガン癖強の2つ
Kind of shocked that they started with heavy bowgun. Of all like the big weapons out there, like hammer and lance make a lot of sense, right? Great sword makes a lot of sense. Like a long sword makes a lot of sense. Second weapon is a heavy bowgun, and with ranged second. This I think I saw some people talking about this. Is probably like an expansion on the idea of magic, and this is probably kind of like a retooling of that idea. That there was probably some like prototype of a ranged thing that already existed and it got molded into these things. Also, yeah, bowguns, these unique creations of Monster Hunter, these weapons that are kind of like these mismatches of a ballista and a rifle, which is these completely unique inventions to Monster Hunter. Top speed running charts to this day.
強すぎる
特に当時はボタンじゃなかったですからね。スティックでした
ス
からね。
ティックで攻撃してた
I wonder what on earth possessed them to program the game like this. Like, why? I still haven't played the original Monster Hunter yet. I have it on an emulator. I definitely want to get around to playing it, but like, why did you design it like this? Like, why? It's so weird. I'm excited to play it. I'm excited to get absolutely destroyed and be mad at it.
いざ入ったらラオ何したらいいのみたいなね。
全然分かんない教えてくださいみたいな尻尾に引かれてやられてしまいますみたいな何してたらいいんでしょうか
Hearing him talk about stuff like this makes me, you know, as much as I'm very down with, you know, onwards and upwards for Monster Hunter, I'd love to see either just a soft remake or just a full, like, really well done remaster of the original Monster Hunter. You know, a soft remake being one with, like, barely any changes. They just borderline exact same game from the ground up. I kind of like, feel like I missed out on a bit of an era with listening to them talk about the classics a little bit and just kind of like the rough patches and the very kind of like starting out and birth of the community a little bit. Like that seems as kind of like as rough as that original game seems, that seems like a cool time. I bet that was a really cool time.
そうですね。
そうそう
まあドスからやっぱり古竜
そう
がやっぱり
そうね
スポット当たってきてるので。
Birth of the Modern Elder Dragon is second generation. We had a little bit of a touch. I've talked about this before. A little bit of like a touch and bit of them and kind of figuring them out as these very odd, you know, you have a raid boss and a mythical mystery boss. And then Kieran's just just like a very unusual regular fight. And then, Kushala springs up in second generation, brings this entourage with him, and the modern Elder Dragon is born. I wish they kept some of the Elder Dragon mechanics around. That's something I'd really like for them to reinstate. I know it was probably cut for like the sake of efficiency, but I don't know. I feel like it took a little bit too much away. Just kind of like how mythical the Elder Dragons felt. Even at like these four, which are like at the lowest tiers of power that Elder Dragons can go to. Yeah, no, I'd love to see some of that stuff reinstated.
基本的にはこの世界屋台骨なんだけど、そのワンクラス上のやつらがいるっていう、そのなんていうかな、ファンタジックな部分っていうのを古竜っていうやつ。
Basically what I said, Elder Dragons bring that like level of fantasy back into Monster Hunter. That was always kind of the cool thing about Kieran and Fatalis, is you have this very grounded world with these very well thought out creatures, and then the dichotomy and the contrast of the Elder Dragons adds this level of additional fear to the Elders that they would not have had this been a full-blown fantasy game where the monsters can kind of just do whatever they can do because they're monsters. That contrast bolsters the Elder Dragons above other monsters like them in other games that do very similar things. And even then, the bulk of the Elder Dragons still have some form of ability to be explained and some methods that we understand how they work.
パートナーとして出てでこの
Such a crazy feature lost to time with Dose. The whole PvP thing is just such an interesting thing that just was one and done, I think. I think Frontier had something quite kind of like it. Maybe. I don't remember. It had some form of PvP to it. That game was massive. It's super odd that it's just kind of gone, right? It'd be way more interesting than the typical arena that we have, because I hate arena.
一択でラージャンが強いっていう世界やったんやけどモンスターもこう餌与えていくと強化できるんだけど、そのラージャンの強化する素材がキリンの角やって。で、
そう設定的にもね。
そう。で今となってもそれが設定としてはこうキリンの角を食うっていう設定がラージャンに残ったっていうのはそこ。
So funny that this became lore, almost kind of like off of a joke, basically. It's like, yeah, can we make this canon? Yeah, sure. Why not? And now it is. It's really cool.
するモンスターみたいな扱いで、生まれたのがガルルガなんですよね、本当はね。
そうですね。
Interesting that they're talking about wanting to create a creature that would come back and forth between certain titles. That's just all the monsters now. Interesting to think of this perspective from so early on. It's like, yeah, no, we're going to have like this monster that kind of like cuts back and forth between these different eras. It's just kind of what just happens in general now. That Yangaruga was kind of the idea for that. I guess it's kind of interesting. It's natural that it evolved to just be a general thing for monsters. Again, I'll talk about Yangaruga. Flagship that never was. Odd monster. Odd history to this guy.
のティガレックスが生まれると。
最初、メインモンスターを新規で何かしら作ろうって話になったんですけども、モンスターハンター無印とかに作った設定資料とかめちゃくちゃあるんですけど、ワイバーンレックスって言われるこう飛竜。
So interesting that they're talking about Wyvern Rex. This concept art that was just like lost to time, basically. Yeah, I bet a fair bit of people know about Wyvern Rex, probably one of the more famous monsters that never was. And now he's just kind of like this ancestral creature that we're probably never going to see. But, he's a canonical ancestor of Tigrex. And I think, Tigrex is like his closest current day relative. And he's the progenitor of pretty much every flying wyvern. Be really cool to see Wyvern Rex. Something I don't think is ever going to happen, but how cool would that be?
G が今までのモンスターハンタータイトルの中で一番開発期間がやっぱ短くて、
そうですね。
で初めにコンセプト企画書って作るやん。あれのバージョン 1.0 っていうのがあって、でそれが2007年の4月の20
So proposal number 1 for Freedom Unite comes out April 25th, 2007. Nearly a year later, Freedom Unite comes out. I mean, it is an expansion, but it's crazy to think about like what a turnaround that is. And in terms of like where Monster Hunter is now, Freedom Unite's not the most ambitious expansion out there. It doesn't do nearly as much as say an Iceborne does, or Sunbreak does, or TriUltimate does. That's kind of like a blast from the past to think about just how much shorter and how much simpler making games probably was way back then. And just kind of like how big and bloated and hefty and heavy the bigger levels of the industry are now. I hope Wilds is doing fine. I think I heard recently that Capcom employees were getting a pretty chunky raise recently, which is cool. I hope they're all doing well. I hope the development is going as smooth as it can be.
オープニングのナルガがねまだ本モデルじゃなかったからシルエットだけ見せてごまかせるようにしたね最後ね。
That's hilarious. I mean, this looks pretty close to done, but the fact that there's definitely missing details and they purposely shrouded him in darkness, that this isn't Nargacuga done. That's hilarious.
もう開発もやっぱり時間めちゃくちゃ
めっちゃかかったねこれね。
正直今まで僕がやった中で一番苦労したんじゃないかなと思いますね。
何ヶ月かかった？
もうこれもう立ち上げから最後までの2年丸々。
Hearing that, it took 2 years to get Zinogre to work, and the fact that he came out as good as he did, something that's going to take that long is either going to be your least favorite or your most favorite, depending on how he comes out. And Zinogre out the gate is pretty big and successful. So, hearing that, it's no wonder that Ichinose loves the dude so much, because a ton of work sounds like it went into this guy. He's very unique for the time. He's still kind of unique now. I don't think that, besides the subspecies, nothing really shares as a skeleton. King of the Fanged Wyverns. Only Fanged Wyvern for a good long while. And we're going to see, like, the concept art is just wild. They probably went back and forth on, like, what he looked like for a very long time. I would assume that ate up a lot of design time.
デザインともだいぶ最初の段階二足歩
Yeah, so you hear that about the gameplay. And by the way, this is cool creature design concept art. Yeah, no, a lot of Zinogre probably came down to like, what on earth is this creature gonna be for a very, very, very long time.
テーマのゲーム何か生活感を感じるもの何かないかなって話をちょっとその当時とかの企画のメインの方と一緒にちょっと話してて洗濯かお風呂ぐらいかみたいな話になってお風呂はなんか気持ちよさそうやしなんか温泉とかまあ日本人の感覚でいうとやっぱりこう気持ちよくてリフレッシュする感があるんでなんかそこら辺のところちょっとモチーフにやりたいねって話してでもう風呂しかないっていうか温泉しかないっていうのでちょっとこう食事に変わるシステムっていうのでちょっと入れた感じではあります。
Really cool that stuff came in like this. Again, I don't know some of the classic hubs particularly well. There wasn't a lot of amenities like this in Freedom Unite, which is the oldest Monster Hunter hub that I know very well. Someone in the comments who's played like the original games could probably inform me. But cool to see that like interactivities with the hub seem to get like a really nice big kick right here in Portable Third. And stuff like this has been one of my favorite things to have in Monster Hunter, as my friends and I have killed many, many hours just hanging out in the hub and just talking and having a good time. You know, I've joked a number of times. There have been 3-hour play sessions of Iceborne, and 2.5 hours of those were in Celiana.
横断してアプトンスがこう逃げて
あいつらだけ逃げていけるね。
でうわもうここ入らせろみたいなこのよ
So much stuff from Monster Hunter born out of that request. To think that it started, I mean, this might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but that the idea kind of stemmed from this player request kind of similar to like this, and just how much has come out of Underwater and how much TriU has influenced Monster Hunter going forward. Humble beginnings. Very interesting to learn this.
のモンスターを据えようっていうので、まあそこはワンセットでも、面白くならない限り水中はフィックスしちゃダメぐらいで勢いでやってたから。
そう。
So that little bit right there, that's definitely, I think, part of the reason why Underwater hasn't been back in a while, is interesting and fun. I'm not a big disparager of the Underwater combat in Tri and Tri Ultimate. Can't speak as much to Tri Ultimate, I haven't played it as much. I never thought the Underwater combat in Tri was as dog water as some people make it out to be. It's definitely flawed. I think a mentality like this is a big reason why it hasn't come back since, is if it can't be fun and it can't be interesting, they're not gonna do it. And it's definitely got to be just this massive resource sink as well. But like it's got to be good or it can't be in there. I think it's definitely been the big holdback for Underwater going forward. Are we gonna see it in Wilds? I don't know. I'm still kind of 50-50 on it.
いろんな角度で関われるけどアクセスしやすい感じと、なんかそのやり取りがモンハンライクっていうゲームデザインになっ たからすごい思う。
Right. So, absolutely tremendous amount of backbreaking labor probably went into the formation of what the underwater was in Tri, right? And it's mixed. I think that's the most appropriate. It's not trash, and it definitely wasn't great. It was mixed. But the fact that this was 2009, so probably being developed in like 2007, 2008, and the fact that it was built on the Wii of all things. The fact that it was as seamless as it was, as like stable as it was, that it functioned as it did, that it was able to kind of get across how Monster Hunter should kind of feel as well as it did. There is definitely some level of technical achievement about the underwater combat in Tri. Flawed as it is, and as much as, it should improve, a little bit more is definitely due in terms of respect into how it did come out.
正直僕らその後 MH4 モンスターハンター
そうね、
4作ってたんですけど、
作ってた。
ちょっとモンスターハンター4がちょっと
Interesting that Tri Ultimate was the product of a wait time for 4. The way Monster Hunter's history has been going, we kind of just expect the expansion at this point, that they're just gonna do them. That if 4 was kind of cruising along a little bit faster, that Tri Ultimate might not have existed. That is very interesting to learn, because I never would have considered that. Because, you have G is the expansion to Portable and the original Monster Hunter, and you have, you know what? Dose never really had an expansion, because Freedom Unite is an expansion of Freedom 2, unless you want to, no, Frontier technically doesn't count, but it was built on top of Dose. Yeah, no, that kind of makes sense. Dose didn't really have a proper expansion. The 4 Ultimate kind of like set that, like, bar, and then 3 Ultimate kind of just built on top of that, and then it just kind of went and became more of a mainstay and more of this just kind of like generally accepted thing about Monster Hunter. But the thing, the 3 Ultimate might have not existed.
スイッチだからガノトトス足そうみたいな。
And Plesioth is the guy that really cemented it, that they wanted to bring him underwater. That's funny. And from a friend of mine, Plesioth wasn't all that bad underwater. I gotta really take a crack at Tri Ultimate. Maybe get like a Wii U emulator if I can get my hands on one. And, that's even more interesting to consider that Tri Ultimate was not necessarily a guarantee, because Tri Ultimate is what brought almost every portable third monster to the West. Minus Amatsu and minus Brute Tigrex for the time, because Brute Tigrex wasn't around until 4 Ultimate stateside, and Amatsu wasn't around stateside until the Generations era. Almost every portable third monster was brought to the West in TriU, and if Tri Ultimate wasn't a thing, there's some of those subspecies we just straight up might never have received. Think about that. That's weird. Alternate timeline out there where Purple Ludroth and Sand Barioth and Jade Barioth and a couple of others just never came over here.
地形周りでちょっとチャレンジしてたっていう、
そうですね、
ジャンプ攻撃作りたいとか、
高低差ね。
そうトライのそのちょっと水中の高低差での遊びみたいなのがやっぱどうしてもこう
I said this. All right, you're gonna have to excuse me for a second. I said this. I saw a couple people talking about this and they were wrong. That the underwater combat in Tri wasn't worth it. I categorically disagree. I borderline objectively disagree. The long-term legacy of underwater is success. Underwater kinda rocky. For all kinds of intents and purposes, failure might be a word you could attribute to it. In its own instance, it wasn't great, it wasn't solid, so much so that it is yet to come back, right? But they were still pleased with the idea. They liked the concept, they liked the idea of it, they liked the three-dimensional space, and I said this in my Christmas special last winter. I talked about Lagiacrus. That three-dimensional concept stumbled out of Tri and was kind of brought back to a grounded level and retooled for three-dimensional combat in 4. That's what they said. They were happy with it, and they wanted to kind of retool it, have a more kind of topographical feel to the ground. They kind of brought it back down to earth and made that three-dimensional space a lot more manageable, a lot more easier, without like the whole space being 3D. It's just like these action intervals interjected in with it. the long-term legacy of Underwater is success. It was worth it. It was always worth it. Not even just this, but the wire bugs, the whole categories of Leviathans, the shallow water duels that we have in 5th generation, so much good stuff came out of that. People were saying that it wasn't worth it. It was. I'm dying with that on my tombstone.
下から上を取られた時どうしようとか、いろんな思考がこのフィールドの地形に対しても考えれるようになったっていうのは、やっぱモンスターが対応する、プレイヤーが対応するっていうのが大きいから。
I'd imagine that it was probably even more difficult from like a planning sense to do these topographical battles than it was to do Underwater, because with Underwater you're just kind of fighting in a big space with maybe like a couple of rocks and whatnot in the middle of everything. In this they had to like plan all these little bumps and divots and hills and cliffs and trees and webbings and structures and branches and whatnot. I'd imagine, you know, probably a ton of work and very intensive, but the creative process behind creating a lot of the maps and the monsters for 4 was probably also very creatively fulfilling.
ここで、現状の全14武器種が揃うんですね。
全部のね。
総中根とチャージアックスが。
That was interesting terminology. Very interesting choice of words. We completed our set of 14 weapons. I talked about this. It feels like they're very comfortable with the 14. Now again, translations and whatnot, along with like everything I've said, perfectly fine. If someone wants to point out that like, no, they said kind of something different in the Japanese with any of this, that's perfectly fine. We completed our set of 14 weapons. Kind of sounds like they're good. We've been talking about new weapons coming in for a while. It's been 10 years, and the fact that it's been 10 years, it could mean that it was past time, or it could have meant that that the time is past, right? Maybe the time's passed. Maybe they're just good. Maybe they're just good. And you know what? If they're good, they're good. 14 is a really nice collection. And it's tough to think of like what doesn't exist in Monster Hunter. Like what would they add that would just be an experience that nothing else could wholly provide? Doable, for sure, but to some extent you gotta think perhaps that adding more weapons would be adding more weapons for the sake of it. And is that really necessary? Is that where resources should be going? And, you know, with how ambitious the expectations are kind of getting and how many monsters people are going to want in the games and old features and new features and blah, 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 blah. Like, their own ideas that they have, maybe Weapon 15 and 16 just aren't worth it. Maybe they just don't need to happen. I mean, we'll see, for sure, but if Chargeblade and Insect Glaive are the last two that we get, I can live with that. I'd be a little sad, but I can live with that. We wanted logical weapons, so we focused on combining and transforming things. There's a reason most real weapons don't do that. It's called getting blood and guts in your gears and mechanisms.
まあ展開した時も海外のコミュニティを感じるようになってたから、
トライから取り組み始めて、で 4G とかでも結構やってですよね。
そうそう。だからいろんなとこでちっちゃな
Cool to see this talked about. You know, World is credited as kind of being like the game that brought Monster Hunter into the mainstream, and it's true. But the role that 4 Ultimate played, also Try Ultimate too, but 4 Ultimate is a little underestimated in just how important 4 Ultimate was in kind of bringing things forwards. And, you know, this was right around where Monster Hunter was getting its story. Gore Magala was this really cool, edgy dragon guy who had this very major presence in the narrative. Very right place, right time.
モンスターハンタークロスだよね。
はい、そうですね。
はい。これ実は全然違うタイトルだったよね。最終的にはちょっといっちゃんと僕でやる。
Curious what that original title was going to look like. Definitely kind of changed for the better with the 10th anniversary game of Generations, but odd that it kind of was. I mean, granted, it probably wasn't super duper far along in the pipeline. Probably kind of in like pre-production and like planning at the time. But yeah, no, kind of curious to think that Generations wasn't really going to be Generations at the start.
しようって話に、まあ、領土さんと合流してで領土さんから、もう
Perfect way to sum it up. Festival's a great word for it. Though a little narratively light and definitely kind of leaning on its fan service kind of hard. calling Generations and Generations Ultimate the monster hunters that are a festival or a party is the best way to look at them, because that's what they are.
部分的にも何かちょっとアクションの部分で新しさとかがないとやっぱマンネリがちょっとし始めるかなっていうので、既存の武器のところに何かちょっとシステムを加えることで遊びを広げられないかなっていうので、ちょっとこういったシステムをちょっと入れる。
And this is Generations is where Ichinose kind of turns into the Ichinose that we now know more. I'm a respecter of it. I haven't loved every single choice that's made its way into the games he's directed, but I respect the hell out of the dude. I think he's got a good sense of fun and a sense for just how can we push this? Where can we take this? How can we make the gameplay just crazy and nuts and wild and actiony? And that's very suiting for the more portable-oriented, more kind of fast-paced games. You know, we got very, very accustomed to sitting down and playing World on our TVs and being very, very immersed in everything. And, you know, Rise and Generations weren't necessarily built with exactly that frame of reference in mind. Taking what we were talked about a little bit ago with the Core 14 and then just, all right, we have 14 weapons, let's quadruple them, basically, with these styles and these arts and just all these, like, mismatches and different combinations and different abilities and ideas and all these equipable and unequipable moves and whatnot, and just, let's just push things. My preference is the meatier, more grounded, heavier, heftier, in touch with nature Monster Hunter. But man, dude, like, Ichinose's games are a lot of fun.
個人的にはその後結構厄介なのがガムート。
なんですか？
でかい。
でかいのが厄介な。
いや結構ほらあっこに出そうとかってなった時に、
そういうこと
あいつどでかいから。
でもあの当時はでかいマンモスが出したかったんですよね。どうしても。でも全然ガムートなんかいい感じにすれば。
Okay, a lot of people are gonna cling to this. I'll kind of cling to this too. You know, tinfoil hat going back on. So it looks and sounds like Gammoth was eyed for 5th generation. That being Iceborne and probably Frost Isles in Rise. And she didn't work. And we've talked about this before. Reason probably didn't work, and probably also a big issue for monsters like Ravios and Duramboros and a couple of others of that ilk, is that they're massive. And we don't have the loading screens anymore. We have, like, more narrow passages and stuff like that. Rise especially, because Rise is a borderline hybrid of classical Monster Hunter and the world formula, where very big battle arenas with these little segmented paths. And yeah, no, for a lot of those transition areas, there's no way you're gonna get Gammoth to work. So now they're talking about, if we fix up Gammoth a little bit, maybe we can do it. Does that indicate that we're looking at kind of like playing around with Gammoth some more? And it's not a no. It's definitely not a no. And again, we've been talking about a teaser trailer for Wilds, and we don't want to necessarily make up in our heads what Wilds is going to be, but the gameplay we saw very much looked to be in-game rendered. And if that's the case, the arenas look colossal in comparison to anything that came before them. If that's the case, big monsters like Gammoth, like Duramboros, like Ravios, and bigger than that definitely have a chance of coming back. And I'm wondering if that is true, if monsters of that size are brought into the design consideration for Wilds. We're definitely a couple months out from getting anything definitive on that, but this little bit about Gammoth is very interesting. And this could potentially be very good news for her.
生まれたのがこれも結構大人気バルハルクって、ちょっと一風変わったモンスターに見えたと思うんだよね。あれって、まあ、どんな経緯とか
元デザインのところ
I want to see that concept art. It used to look like an first of all, Orca monster and Monster Hunter. Yeah, I want to see what that looks like. Valstrax is an Orca. What? That's wacky. That's a concept I hope they bring back sometime. I'd be interested to see what that is, what that means.
プロスってね、初代から出てるんやけど、ここでね一番スポット当たったかもからね。
確かにそうかもしれないですね。特徴的な色にもね、してたんで、結構印象には残るモンスターになったんじゃないかなと、まあ2つの中でもとは思いますね。
Good point. It's always been kind of odd how much staying power Diablos has had, especially because Modoblos was arguably the much more interesting one coming out of the first one. But Diablos is he's just kind of never really gone away. Not for very long, at least, with 4 really being his only real major absence. Diablos has just kind of had a lot of staying power, despite not being a flagship, despite having a cousin who had more work put into him at the beginning. And he just kind of stuck around and stuck around and stuck around. And then he gets just this god-level deviant that really just kind of solidified Diablos is this, like, really big powerhouse heavy hitter. Diablos kind of wound up being a good horse to bet on, I suppose. And then you got, like, Varusabros in Frontier. It's just another just absolute demon Diablos. They've pulled a lot of really cool stuff out of Diablos. I'm really hoping that they can kind of learn how to nail the core Diablos' combat at some point.
Right
off the bat, right from the jump, it's seeming that Tokida, the guy who directed World, is gonna be the guy directing Wilds. I think this is kind of sounds like it's been soft confirmed. I haven't 100% read what was going on about this, but this was something I heard buzz about maybe about like 2 or 3 weeks ago. And if Tokida's gonna be directing Wilds, we're in good hands, because I feel like we're probably getting a guy who, like, really kind of delved in with World and this, like, new direction of Monster Hunter. And now that foundation's been made. So now you can just take that foundation and just stack a game on top of all that experience. Not to say that Wilds is going to be World 2. We know that it's not. But some of the carryover and some of the experience and some of the ideas behind it being expanded on and thought through more and all that good stuff bodes well.
なんかそれぐらいの勢いで結構徳田がこう黒敵だもんだからかなり気合が入り直し
Cool sentiment to hear that, you know, they got a lot of this feedback, they heard a lot of these things. Some of it was a bit blunt and not always kind, and that was a point of reinvigoration, not dejection. It was like, okay, well, let's take a look at this, let's tackle this. What are they saying? How can we approach this? How can we kind of reach out and branch out and make Monster Hunter something that's more beloved, that's a little bit more accessible?
今回やっぱりそのナンバリングをやめたというか、そのタイトルとしてもちょっと自分たちのテーマをやっぱり
Not a bad call. I kind of agree with this call, that they're just kind of taking whatever the theme of the game is and turning that into the title. They'll talk about in a second how basically this was just called Project World and like, Monster Hunter World, that works. And you know, that it stuck. It was a good title for that game. Probably the same thing happened with Rise. And yeah, it definitely makes the games feel a little bit more approachable and feel like kind of they have their own identity, really. You know, Monster Hunter World says a little bit more and is a bit more inviting and a bit more approachable than Monster Hunter 5, I would say. Especially because they were hoping to get it to many, many, many more people than it originally got around to, than the series ever did, which, you know, they did. And calling it Monster Hunter, if World was called Monster Hunter 5, probably would have sold extremely well just off of word of mouth and advertising. Probably not quite as good, though, just from the approachability of the numbers. I think the way they're going about things now and the kind of brand shifting they're going on now, good choice. Kind of lets every single game really kind of be its own thing.
なりそうだまでは分かるけど、本当にそれをゲームとして遊び出した時にそれにこうどれぐらい価値を見出せるかみたいなんてなかなかこう伝わりづらいというか、
プレイヤーがね関与しないって思われがちっていう、
最初実装した時に、結構チームにも効率重視のプレーをする子がいて、狩りの効率を回すのが好きみたいな人がいて、その子がこんなのめんどくさいし誰もやらないんじゃないですかみたいなことを言ってたんですよ。でその後にダメージ表記を実装したんですよ。
そうだね。
プレイヤーが普通に攻撃すると10とか20とかしか
桁が違うからね。
縄割れしてバーンと外したら1000以上ドーンと入った瞬間にその効率重視の子があれ使わないのおかしいっすよみたいなくるって変わってその時
this was one of the more fascinating bits of information that they unveiled through these interviews, that damage numbers were the product of turf wars. Now, damage numbers actually did come around in Monster Hunter a little before that. They were present in Monster Hunter Online, which fully released in 2016. That was definitely built more into that game's MMO DNA. And, you know, if there was any look at online for the idea of damage numbers, I don't think they're ever going to say, I don't think they're ever going to talk about Monster Hunter Online ever again. I think they're going to kind of pretend like that game didn't happen. But, yeah, no, that Turf Wars was kind of like this instigator for damage numbers to come in is definitely interesting. It's certainly kind of looking at it as like something to play at. I totally kind of get what they were talking about. Whereas, you know, there is just like kind of the raw spectacle of the monsters fighting. Like, that's really, really cool. Then you see, you know, 1,000 damage, 10, I don't know how high, I forget how high they get up in Iceborne, but 3,000, 3,500, 4,000 damage in those Turf Wars that you get into like master rank, and it just kind of adds to that. It just kind of feels like it hits a little bit harder when that happens, right? So I kind of see what that guy was getting at. Very interesting that how those decisions lead to one another. And I've been always kind of like whatever about damage numbers. I've never turned them off. They're fine. I think damage numbers have also just kind of in the long run been really, really cool for testing, and especially with like the training range that we have in Rise. The utility of damage numbers for build testing, I think, has been really, really important. It really just kind of adds a visual element to be able to tell you just how much your skills are impacting what you're running. And I think, like, utility-wise, I kind of like what damage numbers have been able to offer to Monster Hunter, and I think they've been able to get the font size and the font specifics right. That haven't really looked bad. I do think they look better in World though.
結構タイトルアップデートでコラボとか結構多く入れたんですけど、逆に言うとアイスボーンは既存モンスター、シリーズモンスターの人気どころをちょっと入れていこうっていう。
そうそう。単純に僕の一個の心残りというか。手強いモンスターがちょっとコラボキャラばっかりだったんで。
I also kind of thought that World ended weird. That World ended kind of like on the Lessons. It was odd that there wasn't a TU5. And if you remember, like, a couple of leaks that came out about World, there was stuff being hinted at that Orochi Kirin and Alatreon were slated for the base game of Worlds. And that leak seemed pretty legit, because it had indications towards Lunastra and Deviljho and Kolv Taroth before we knew about them. I'm wondering what got shifted and scrambled. I have a feeling that the collab quests probably took a lot of development time, because they were fundamentally quite different. Just a normal Monster Hunter quests and them, and then stuff kind of got shifted and moved and backed around. Yeah, no, World ended very, very odd. And the title updates of Monster Hunter World Iceborne is like one of the most legendary and just intense and exhilarating and fun points of Monster Hunter that's ever been around.
キャプチャー
This was the best.
昔はもう全部手付けだったじゃないですかモンスター。
そうだね。
I love this video so much.
キリンのこう角をバキって折るとこペットボトルバーンって折ってうわーって。
That dude's having the time of his life.
あれでしょ。
そうですよ。ドスの時に
大闘技会。
そうでキリンの角を食べるとめちゃくちゃ強くなるっていうのあれが成人の儀式なんですよとかいろいろ言っててそれを回収してくれたんですよね。そのモンスターハンターの中でその和のテイストとか、まあアジア圏のなんかネタみたいなのをちょっとやってもいいのかなっていうので、ちょっと、テーマに今回ちょっとした。
And Komura Village turned out to be one of the most beautiful villages that they've made. I love the art design of that place, and just kind of how like lively and as a community it feels. That hub is so well done.
地形を使った遊びってもちょっと考えようかった時にこう壁に張り付いたりだったりとか、まあ、地形でいろんなことをしたいっていうところがありワイヤーを使ったようなアクションっていうのをちょっと足したいなっていうところから、まあ、単純にワイヤーでフックをかけてなんか登るとかそういった ターのものではなくて、ちょっとせっかくモンスターハンターの世界なんで何か生き物を使った形でそういったものをちょっと表現しようっていうのが
Something big about grappling hooks in like the beginning of the 2020s, like late 2010s. Every game had a grappling hook. Monster Hunter was not immune to that trend. Turned out all right, you know. Wire bugs are fine. I do like them, but it's just they were everywhere for like 4 years. Do you guys? Anyone else feel that?
のところやねんけど、で、まあ、今回ちょっとテーマをライズとは変えたところの理由っていうのは
もう一度その和の世界で行くよりもあえてここは洋風に倒すことで、西洋の妖怪ではないんですけれども、やはりモンスターという存在がたくさんいますので。
Pretty smart choice on his bit to kind of do like the yokai of the West rather, and kind of going into the very classic horror monsters that we have. Frankenstein's monster, demons, vampires, and werewolves. Really cool parallel to establish there.
違った登場人物を出すことができるかもしれないといったところを、総合的に考えた時にここをあえて洋風でチャレンジしてみようというところで企画書を書かせていただいてと。
Also kind of curious, because World and Iceborne maintain the same cast of characters. I like those characters. They're fine. Very overly defined by their jobs. And then, again, Komura is like the first village to really have named characters. Decent characters. Very static and very two-dimensional for the bulk of them. And then kind of, it must have been a risk, really, to kind of go into Sunbreak and we're going to do a full new cast from the jump. We only had the expansion to really work on them. You know, we established the residents of Komura, but we're not really going to use them this time around. We're going to go with a whole new cast. And some of the characters from Komura, with Fiorane and Gallius, and I'd say like Chiche specifically, some of the better Monster Hunter characters, and that came out of an expansion. Probably kind of a risk to kind of take this very drastic thematic change from Rise into Sunbreak, but this dude, Suzuki, definitely was able to pull off a choice that I feel like if I was in the room, I would have considered kind of risky. You know, if I just kind of like put my own head in that space, if I was the guy, I would probably think like, we have a foundation, let's kind of like just grow on what we have. But this was a really big pivot that he was able to pull off pretty damn well. I still maintain, I think that Sunbreak is probably the best Monster Hunter story. I think at this point it has, in my mind, dethroned what 4 Ultimate did, with 4 Ultimate being definitely second and pretty close for sure. But yeah, no, I think especially some of the character work that was able to come out of Sunbreak, even though, you know, it's not the deepest, craziest, nuttiest thing ever, but there was some good stuff in there, decent dimension to those characters. And you know, they only had half a game really to get that in there. So this guy's pretty good at what he does.
ハンターフロンティアがサービス終了を迎えたタイトルでもあったんですね。遊べなくなってしまったそのユーザーの皆さんにそのモンスターハンターフロンティアの要素っていうのを何かこう届けられないかなっていう気持ちが一つあったのと、でもう一つはそのモンスターハンターのフロンティアのモンスターっていうのは新鮮に感じられる部分もあるんじゃないかなと、そういった面から一体モンスターを出してみようというふうに考えまして、モンスターハンターシリーズにおいて、直近の作品において、マッチするモンスターどれかなっていうのを考えた時に、生態であったりとか、もしくはアクションであったりとか、そのあたりを考慮した結果エスピナスという一体を選ばせていただいたということにはなりますね。
なるほど。
So a lot of the stuff coming out of the 20th anniversary bodes pretty well for Frontier. Not that I think that everything is going to be saved. I think there's probably some monsters and some concepts and some things that are definitely going to stay in Frontier. And thankfully, we do have the fan-recovered servers for the sake of preservation in that degree. I don't think we're going to get everything back piece by piece. But with Espinas rating as high as he did, Flaming Espinas coming in just within the top 100, them wanting to bring in a Frontier monster for the people who loved Frontier bodes really well for these creatures. He said specifically that they thought that the creatures of Frontier would be a breath of fresh air. The monsters of Frontier being fresh air. You know, emphasis on the plural. That they might be looking at and have looked at others. Yeah, Espinas is a very easy choice. He's the poster boy. A lot of people who have only some proverbial rudimentary knowledge of Frontier will know who Espinas is. Probably the most famed of them. Certainly the players of Frontier will know who he is. He's the poster boy. He's very, very well received. And not only that, but the fact that they were kind of willing to put him in there. I don't know everything. I don't know the whole story, but from tidbits and bits and pieces that I have heard, there were issues and a general dislike between like main Capcom teams and the Capcom Online teams. I have heard that there was some bad blood. How true that is, I'm not entirely sure. But that was definitely a level of obstacle between Frontier ever being able to get respect, being able to get notoriety, being able to get preservation in Monster Hunter now that Frontier was gone and Online was gone and Explore was gone. And Online's probably going to stay gone. But we'll see it. We'll see about more with Frontier. We'll see about Explore. But the fact that they're like acknowledging it, putting a little bit of respect on the name of it, thinking about the people who are fans of it, bringing monsters into it, and that those monsters seem to be a hit. We know that there was Frontier staff who worked in Sunbreak, and that there were more elements of Frontier that made it their way into Sunbreak that weren't just Espinas and Flaming Espinas, and the fact that Monster Hunter Frontier, Frontier G, and Frontier Z all made their way onto the memorial wall for the 20th anniversary of Monster Hunter. These are all things that bode rather well for the continued exploration and existence of that facet of Monster Hunter now that the game of origin is no longer around and being worked on officially. Again, we still have the fan-recovered servers, thankfully. The doors are opened, and I think how well Espinas ranked definitely, and how he was received, definitely continues to further open those eyes. And I think maybe whatever negative opinions that existed, maybe some of that can be eased over for the sake of bringing things into mainland Monster Hunter that people will enjoy, and bringing a lot of really, really great creations into regular Monster Hunter. A whole chunk of monsters from Frontier that I think would very easily work in the numbered titles, and there's some that I think would be much more suited for portable titles, something that's Ichinose directed. What came out of this 20th anniversary project regarding Frontier has made me very happy. Again, nothing is promised, nothing has been seen. Who knows, right? If I were a betting boy, I do think that some, at least whether it's base game, title update, expansion, title update of expansion, I think we're going to see some chunks of Frontier in Wild some way, shape, or form.
まずはその天妻が土で、ライズから続く流れ。
So it is a continuation and end for Rise. I'm still, unless someone comes out and tells me otherwise, and I will accept it if I am directly told otherwise. Amatsu is meant to be the last title update for Monster Hunter Rise's base game. I've said this like 6 or 7 times in a whole bunch of places.
メモとかもちゃんと作ってくれてて、
そうやね。
ちゃんとなんかストーリーの保管とかもなんかできたのがすごい良かったって感じだな。
はい、ありがとうございます。
I think they were able to wrap up both of those stories incredibly well. Amatsu's story and Primordial Malzeno's story are two absolute high points that just came out back to back for Rise Sunbreak. And we're able to close out both of those narratives really well with some good emotion coming out of them, some really good stuff out of the characters, 2 really, really awesome fights. Primordial Malzeno was what, place number 13? Yeah, dude, they pulled. Rise was a bit of a rocky road. Had its share of controversies. COVID definitely kicked the crap out of it from the beginning. It ended really strong, and that's definitely something that it needed, was just a really, really, really strong ending. And I think that's definitely going to help to maintain a positive legacy for these games. And you know, they are just good, rather. Not my all-time favorite, but I think they're genuinely quite good. And yeah, so that's gonna wrap up us talking and chatting and discussing and tinfoil hatting and blabbering and rambling and all that good crap about the 20th anniversary special of Monster Hunter. A lot of theory crafting, a lot of maybes and let's sees and could this be's, but we had a lot of fun, I'd say. I don't know, you haven't watched this video yet, I'm in the middle of recording it right now, but yeah, no, let's have a discussion down below once you guys are all said and done, and we'll talk this out and talk about what we think. I think there's some stuff to read between the lines here in these interviews and in this list and whatnot, and just kind of taking a look at what might be hinted at. Again, they're not really saying anything overtly, so I'll reserve the right to say that, you know, this was just tinfoil hat stuff and things were read into a little bit deeper than they were meant to, but there's a lot of bits and pieces of information that I think bode very well for the future of Monster Hunter with what little we can glean about things. And we'll see. We're going to see, for sure. I, for one, am very excited. This special made me even more excited for Wilds because it reinforced that, you know, say what you want about Capcom, but in terms of, like, the guys with their boots on the ground actually making these games, you know, we're in the hands of people who seem to genuinely love what they're doing and love Monster Hunter, have a lot of appreciation for what has come before, continue to just build and grow and expand on what they've been creating, and have always wanted to just kind of keep pushing and pushing and pushing. Don't hope for time to rush by, you know, enjoy the time that you have, but summer, man, it's going to be a good time when it shows up. Let's say that, all right? So, this has been CR-Volcanic, or Connor. I'll see you around. Shout out to all the patrons, and special shout out to Nihilist Chimerax, Datboy Doinda Ding, Sir Newt Newt, Peaberry, Stefan Kalnin, Shaggy Grizzly, Pico Plush, and Daniel Delasarte. Thank you very much.